All right, today we're tackling a really critical question, one that gets right to the heart of public administration. How is it possible for millions of people to be, well, invisible to their own government? This isn't just some historical curiosity. It's a living, breathing case study about identity, data, and social justice in modern India. I mean, that's the central paradox here, isn't it? It sounds almost impossible, but for India's denotified tribes, you'll hear them called DNTs, this is not some abstract thought experiment. It's their daily reality. It shapes their entire relationship with the state. And, it drastically cuts them off from basic rights and opportunities. So what we're really talking about are entire communities fighting back against generations of being pushed to the margins. And their fight starts with a demand that's so fundamental to how a modern government works: just count us. Because let's be real, in the eyes of the state, if you're not in the data, you might as well not exist. Now, to really get why this is so urgent, we have to go back in time. We've got to look at a pretty dark chapter in colonial history. Because this whole thing isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about taking apart a legal system built on prejudice that's been around for more than 150 years. Okay, so let's get our terms straight. Who are the Denotified Tribes, or DNTs? The name itself kind of tells you the whole story. First, under a colonial law, they were notified as criminal communities. Then, after independence, that law was thrown out and they were denotified. But, and this is the key part, just scratching out the legal label, that didn't come close to erasing the stigma. This timeline is so important to understanding the whole issue. It really maps out this legal roller coaster from persecution to, well, what was supposed to be liberation. So you see, in 1871, the Criminal Tribes Act made the branding official. Then, fast forward to 1952, the act gets repealed. That should have been a huge moment, right? But look what happened next. States started rolling out these Habitual Offender Acts, which, let's be honest, were basically a new way to keep targeting the very same communities, just with a different name. And check out this quote from T.V. Stevens, the guy who introduced the original act. It tells you everything you need to know about the thinking back then. The whole law was built on this completely bogus, pseudo-scientific idea that being a criminal was something you inherited. It's a prejudice that was literally written into law. And that shadow has stretched over these communities for generations. So this historical wrong didn't just disappear. It morphed into a total administrative nightmare in modern India. Yeah, getting rid of the colonial law was a good first step, but actually bringing these communities into the fold of the new Indian Republic, that turned out to be a massive challenge, one that ultimately just made them invisible to the system. And here's where it gets really tricky from a policy perspective. You have scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, right? They have their own dedicated schedules in the Constitution. They have a box to tick. But the DNTs, they have no formal home like that. And if you don't have a distinct constitutional category, that means no dedicated census data and no clear targeted legal protections. They're stuck in this kind of constitutional limbo. Over the years, the government set up commissions to try and figure this mess out. And this chart, which comes from the I-8 Commission's report, shows what they found. The DNTs are just scattered everywhere. Some are listed under scheduled castes, some under scheduled tribes, others under other backward classes. But the really alarming part is that big slice over there. It represents a huge chunk of these communities that don't fit into any official category at all. Yeah, just look at that number, 267. That's not people, that's 267 distinct communities that a government commission said are living in a complete policy blind spot. Think about it. If you're not classified under SC, ST, or OBC, you are completely invisible to the entire welfare system. You just fall right through the cracks. And this brings us to a fundamental rule of public administration. This is Public Admin 101. If you can't count a community, you can't make good policy for it. It's that simple. Without solid data on how many people there are, where they live, what their economic situation is, any welfare scheme is basically just a shot in the dark. The SEED scheme is the perfect, and honestly, a pretty tragic example of this. So the central government creates this special program, Scheme for Economic Empowerment of DNTs. They put a big budget behind it, 200 crore. But guess what? The money just sat there. It couldn't be spent. And the reason is almost unbelievable. People couldn't get a DNT certificate because most states don't even issue them. It's a classic case of good intentions slamming right into an administrative brick wall. Okay, so that brings us to what's happening right now. After dealing with this endless cycle of administrative failure, community leaders are saying enough is enough. They're making a very specific, very concrete demand to finally break this cycle of being invisible, and they have their sights set on the 2027 census. And their demands are really clear and make a ton of sense. It's a two-step plan. Step 1, give us a separate column in the census. That's the data part. You have to be counted first. Step 2, use that data to create a new constitutional schedule for us, just like the ones for SCs and STs. That's the legal recognition part. You see how they connect? One gives you the proof, the other gives you the solution. So let's break down why each of these demands is so critical. A separate census entry. That's all about the how of governing. It gives you the hard data you need to make smart decisions about welfare, about budgets, about political representation. But the constitutional schedule, that's about the why. It's a formal public acknowledgement of the historical injustice, and it provides the solid legal ground for affirmative action. So you have the technical fix, and then you have the moral foundational fix. And it's really important to get this next point because there's nuance here. The DNT community isn't just one big uniform group. It's not a monolith. Community leaders are also pushing for subclassification to deal with what they call graded backwardness. Basically, they're saying that nomadic and semi-nomadic groups within the DNTs are way more marginalized than the settled groups, and any good policy has to recognize that complexity. So why should we care about this specific administrative fight? Well, if you're someone studying how this state actually works or how social justice is supposed to be achieved, this whole case is packed with some really powerful lessons. Especially for those of you studying public policy or gearing up for competitive exams, this is gold. Think of these as the core principles this whole situation highlights. It's like a checklist for good, equitable governance. Number 1, data is the bedrock of social justice. Number 2, you can't fix old historical wrongs without smart, modern administrative fixes. And finally, you can't really empower a community until you give it clear legal and constitutional recognition, period. So we'll leave you with this one final thought to chew on. This whole struggle really boils down to a fundamental question about what a state owes its people. When history leaves such a deep scar on a community, isn't just being seen, being formally recognized, the absolute first step to any kind of real healing or justice? It kind of suggests that before you can talk about welfare or development or anything else, the state first has to simply open its eyes and see its own people.